I'm seeing the attendee numbers going up, so we'll give it a minute for more people to join. Good afternoon, everyone. This is Oregon ITE. We are going to start our webinar soon. Before we do that, I'd like to cover a few housekeeping items. We're using the GoToWebinar platform for today's webinar. Everybody as an attendee is muted, and you can choose to raise your hand if you would like to make a comment or ask a question, or you could use the question box to type in your question. With that, I will turn to Imana Cosma, our co-chair of the Oregon ITE ITS Subcommittee, to start our webinar today. Imana?
Welcome everyone to the first Oregon ITE ITS Subcommittee webinar. My name is Ioana and I am one of the new Oregon ITE ITS Subcommittee co-chairs. The Oregon ITE ITS Subcommittee is made up of Anna Rosler and myself. Anna is a lead ITS engineer at WSB. She has worked with agencies in the Portland area on ITS design projects for the past 9 years. She specializes in fiber optics, traffic signals, and variable speed system design. A little bit about myself. My name is Ioana. I am one of the signal timing engineers in Region 1. I have been with ODOT for 6 years. In my time, I have had the opportunity to work closely with our ITS team on multiple projects, including the Lincoln City Adaptive. Now, the purpose of today's webinar was to look at ways to make work zones safer while minimizing the impacts to our traveling public. So without further ado, please join me in welcoming our first speaker, Justin King, who works for ODOT as the State Traffic Work Zone Engineer. He has been with ODOT for 10 years. Prior to that, he's worked for WashDOT. In his free time, Justin coaches youth soccer, basketball, wrestling, and baseball.
All right, thank you, Ioana. I am here to present smart work zones in relation to the Oregon Department of Transportation. So a smart work zone is a state-of-the-art technology for work zone management. Generally, there's 3 different types. We'll get into that in a little bit. But what we're trying to do is provide real-time warning to the traveling public and up-to-date real-time warning, and then also any operational alerts, how the highway is operating, and any instructions on what to do, and then also provide travel time and route information. For ODOT, this is typically for larger projects, and mainly because a lot of these systems are expensive. The main system components used for smart work zone systems are traffic sensors to collect data, and then portable changeable message signs to relay that data back to the traveling public. But we can also use some of our trip checks and our other traveler information systems to get that data out too. And then these systems are scalable based on the project needs. And then a lot of times we can also do a camera if needed. And currently ODOT pays for these. It's in the, we have a standard spec for these systems, and we're currently paying per day. And we treat these as a vendor. So you're paying a vendor to come in and set up a system on a project. 3 applications currently available at ODOT. They can be modified otherwise, but the first one is the simplest. It's a construction vehicle egress ingress system. Normally what we've seen in the past is the trucks entering roadway message on a PCMS, and it is always up there, and it's not giving you very much information, and a lot of times it's ignored because there's not always a truck entering the roadway. So a vehicle ingress egress system would have a sensor that senses a vehicle either leaving the roadway or entering it, and then actually post that message, vehicle entering or leaving, in real time, so that it's a real-time message and it means something. Another type of system that we were using is a queue detection system. This is advanced warning of stopped vehicles ahead. And luckily for ODOT, we try to design a lot of our projects so that there isn't a queue, but with, I'll say, previous to COVID-19, there was a lot of queuing in the metro area and in the I-5 corridor north of Salem, regardless of how we design our projects. So that queue detection system is designed to detect that queue and then warn the drivers that are coming up to it that something is going on ahead, and either to stop, slow down, or take another route. So we would sometimes try to give them information on how long it's going to take to get to the work zone so that they can make decisions to go a different route. And then the last one is a travel information system. We have set these up where we notify the the public of how much delay there's going through the work zone, how long it's going to take to get through, which is effectively delay, any alternate routes, closures. This is kind of the Google Maps, but on the road instead of trying to look on your phone. So we're trying to give the traveler information so that they can make an informed decision. And then it also helps our construction staff when we inform the public how long it's going to take to get through, so they have an expectation. So what does a smart work zone system usually look like? It usually looks like some type of device on the side of the road. Generally, it's a trailer, and it's going to have a sensor on it. Usually, the PCMS won't be mounted on with the sensor. It's usually previous to that sensor, so we're warning traffic ahead of time. And then every once in a while, you'll see a PTZ camera or camera on the top of those trailers. They don't always have to look like a trailer. Some manufacturers actually just make a barrel that is a sensor, and you can just put the barrel out there, and it's kind of incognito. And this obviously doesn't have a camera in it, and there's no message, but it's a sensor that you can put on the side of the road and gather information to inform the public on what's going on in the work zone. Currently, ODOT does have two different ways to do systems. One's external and the other one is internal. Because ODOT doesn't like external vendors talking to internal systems, we've kind of done it this way. In the future, we're hoping to kind of integrate that so it's one system, but even now we can have that external system provide the data to ODOT in a form and use it. But generally, they're kind of two different systems. So the external system is vendor supplied, generally used on a contract through the generally used through the contractor. So the contractor gets a subcontractor that is setting up that external work zone. Generally, those external work zones provide all the back-end calculations, and they'll have usually their own website that they bring the information to. As mentioned, that information can get to ODOT. It's not the easiest, and then there's also a lag introduced when we kind of do that. So some of the advantages, disadvantages of that is generally they're storing the data, so we don't necessarily have it. We can always get it, and it's third-party hosted. It could be more powerful, and doesn't talk to ODOT. There's also the disadvantage of we're trying to get a third party to do what we want to do, and sometimes that becomes a contract administration issue. We kind of had that on a recent job on I-5. We have developed an internal system, and actually it's more or less related to the permanent ITS system at ODOT, but we just built some trailers, so we just made it portable and put some portable sensors on there, a camera, and it can talk to ODOT-owned message boards. So we have used this on several ODOT projects, contracts, and just kind of supplemented what they already have out there. And then the internal advantages, disadvantages is it's much easier to talk to our internal system, so we can post this information on Trip Check, and then we can also post it to the ODOT-owned signs out in the field. So and I'm gonna play this video. There's just a video from one of the external vendors that kind of walks you through a smart work zone. There is no audio, so I will kind of talk about it. So where there's a queue, there's a data collection. You're collecting data from vehicles. That data could also be gathered by third-party data. And then we're communicating to some central system that then talks to a PCMS message back before the sensor to warn traffic of what's going on. So oops. All right. So that's kind of an example of a smart work zone system. The other nice thing is we can get the notifications from these systems. And I'll speak to that here in a second. So internal, it goes to Trip Check. We can also use the permanent ITS structure. So if you're in the metro area, they have all the travel time information. That is effectively going to double as a smart work zone system. We have in the past on like I-205, the project went through and destroyed the permanent sensors. So then we would just put one of these trailers you see in the picture out there as a temporary sensor and kind of keep that system whole while we're working on the project. And then if we needed to, we could supplement the permanent message signs with temporary portable message signs. And then what we're gathering with those sensors is generally traffic data and how fast people are going. And then we can these also have Bluetooth sensors on them. So if we put one at the beginning of the project and one at the end, we can do delay. It is only as good as the vehicle that passes the second sensor. So the information that you're getting in that delay is a little bit behind live. And then if there is an incident in the work zone, there is no vehicles getting to the second sensor. So then the actual system would show 0 delay, but there you have an incident. So, and then we've also set up the camera system. You can use a third-party software to take images from those cameras. There is some fees associated with grabbing those images, but we've done that before on a couple of projects. And then the internal ODOT system and the external both can notify anybody that's interested in different delay thresholds. So if you have a certain amount of delay and that is going to trigger like, hey, we got 10 minutes of delay through this project. That's kind of a warning sign if something's happening. We can send those messages either through email or a text message through a phone. So you can get notifications on what's kind of going on with your project. Examples of uses at ODOT, we have done time lapse at the Sisters Roundabout with just one of the camera trailers, and we just set up the camera, and then I just used the third-party software and just took an image every 5-10 minutes from that camera and then put them together. I wouldn't say it's the highest quality, but we did capture the building of that roundabout over several months. And then we have used the travel information delay system for Region 4. ODOT used it for the solar eclipse. They were worried about traffic over there, and they wanted to be able to use the cameras to see different intersections. And since it was portable, they could use those, and that seemed to work okay. And then we've used the travel delay kind of travel information systems on several other projects where we expected some delays and wanted to give the public some advance warning of what was going on. Both the I-5 Wilsonville to Woodburn and the I-5 Woodburn to Salem project both used queue warning systems. The Wilsonville to Woodburn project initially did not have a smart work zone in it, and then after fatality, we kind of threw the whole 9 yards at the project and put that smart work zone system in there, and it worked really good. The I-5 Woodburn Salem project just learned from lessons learned from the I-5 Wilsonville project, put that in from the beginning, and it worked okay, but the sensors weren't necessarily moved every day with the work. And so the information gathered from that system wasn't the highest quality. And then coming soon, the I-5 trending project will have, I believe, a queue warning and a dynamic merge system included in it. I think this is going to be covered a little later, so I'll kind of go over this pretty quickly. But in the future, and actually it's the near future, it's right now, ODOT is going to a different integrated transportation info system, and that is RITIS, and that is basically stands for Region Information Transportation Info System. And that is for both permanent and temporary applications. So RITIS is going to grabs a bunch of the probe data out there and kind of compiles it all in one location. And then for work zones, you have to have someone manage this, but you can put your projects in, and then it performs the same function that it does for permanent applications as it does for, or temporary applications as it does for permanent. So for permanent applications, you can look at what your traffic is and how much vehicles, how much delay is going through these different areas, and then it basically performs that same function for work zones. So we can identify where work zones are at, and then look at important data that can help us make decisions. And one of the weaknesses at ODOT right now is we have a theoretical delay that we do not want to go over, but that's in design. But ODOT does not measure that delay to like a minute in construction. We measure it subjectively by the inspector out there, complaints, phone calls, and so this method will actually give us a way to actually measure delay through our projects, and then in the end, it'll help us even further make our delay calculations more accurate. And then for each project, we'll have to do some work on our end, on ODOT's end here, but you can get the information regarding each project if you put that in, and then you can see how the work zone is performing in relation to traffic. So just more data. And we can kind of do that right now, but this is supposed to integrate it a little bit more. And then in the future, what we're looking at is, I'm hoping this is in the near future, is we are looking at trying to, there's already a smart lane closure and a smart arrow board. So if, and this is already in the works, there's vendors that have these, but anytime you have a free flow situation and you put an arrow board out on the road, that arrow board, if it was a smart arrow board, would automatically talk to RIDIS and trip check. And so it's kind of seamless. It just talks to it. And then anytime you have that arrow board up there, now you know where a lane closure is. And then obviously we're going to have some other type of device at the end of the lane closure to signify where it ends. But we're trying to go that route. It's going to be piecemeal at first, but because we got the contractor side and the maintenance side, and then all the cities and counties doing this, so you're going to see it here and there, and it might be a little confusing because this work zone showed up on, there's a lane closure on RIDIS or trip check on this one, and then the next time you see an arrow board, it's not going to show up. But what we're hoping to do is get it so it's fully integrated in Oregon and have smart arrow boards anytime you have a lane closure on a road that is free flow. You allow free flow during construction. And then the second piece of that is kind of expanding that smart lane closure system to basically 2-lane roads where we have flagging operations. So we would have some type of sensor at the beginning of the lane closure and one at the end, identifying where those lane closures are. That also is going to have issues with implementation, ODOT contracts, maintenance, cities, counties, and then you start looking at utilities doing lane closures, and someone's cutting a tree down and they got to do a lane closure. So again, we're going to run into the issue of, some of these are being shown and some of them aren't, and hopefully we get to a place in the near future where they're everywhere. I don't know how far out these will be implemented at ODOT, but they are available now. And with that, I thank you, everybody, and I'll turn it over to the next presenter. Kids.
Oh,
Hello, everyone. Our next presenter will be Matt Dorado, who will present a case study for traffic diversion due to a closure on I-205 that took place this summer. Matt began his career at Group McKinsey in 2004. In 2014, he made the jump from the private sector to the public sector and worked for 5 years for Clark County, Washington, in their traffic operations division. In December of last year, he joined Washington County, Oregon's Signals Group. When he's not working, he enjoys woodworking and making and playing music.
Hello, everyone. Now I'm trying to see, can everybody see my screen as I try and get this going? Okay, good. The presentation's up. All right.
You turn your camera on.
Pardon?
It would be great if you could turn your camera on.
Oh, okay.
Thank you.
Okay. So the help on this project was also done by Sean Quayle, this is my boss, and Bryce Falk, who is our intern this year. Anyway, and so just a quick overview of kind of who I am. come on. There we go. So whenever I'm in kind of the engineering circles, I always introduce myself as a carpenter with an engineering degree. I've been doing that since I was like 13, building houses and other structures. And then at 35, I figured, you know, I have a good back. I still have all my fingers. And it's time to do something where I'm using my brain instead of my body a little bit more. So I went back to school, got my degree from Portland State, did my 10 years at Group McKenzie, or as I call it, the home of the Happy Minute Group. Then, like I said, you know, 5 years at Clark County with the traffic operations group, and then with the signal group that I'm with now. Oops, wrong way. Okay, so to jump into it, the ODOT is doing some, adding a third lane to the southern portion of I-205. And with that, they're also installing 3 speed advisory signs and 4 travel time, which will makes the, you know, some sign bridges and some extra construction work along that corridor. So for this project that they did recently, it was at the interchange of the I-205 and I-5. And for those not familiar with the Portland area, the blue circle is downtown Portland, the red circle is the interchange area, and it's about 18 miles outside of downtown. And here's just a close-up of the interchange area where you can see kind of the ramp configuration going from one freeway to the next. The 2 roadways that were heavily impacted were I-5 and 205. And I-5, for those from, again, outside the area, I-5 is the main artery for the West Coast. It travels from the Mexican border to the Canadian border, and it's, you know, over 1,300 miles long, and approximately 40% of that is in an urban area, and with going through places like San Diego, Los Angeles area, San Francisco Bay, you know, here in Portland, and then Seattle, and 65% of that is usually pretty congested. I-205 is our first kind of ring, outside ring for the Portland area, and it goes from kind of that 18 miles south of downtown Portland up north of Vancouver, Washington, where it ties in. It's about 37 miles long, and just kind of looking at an aerial, you can see that about 50% of that is, you know, urban development next to it, and it gets pretty congested, especially during commute times, and even more so on the Oregon side. So I kind of want to focus on, you know, coming up with the plan for when you have any time of closure. And I really feel that the most important thing is you have to know your roadway. You have to know, you know, the classification and the daily volume. So here are some volumes that I pulled from ODOT. These are pre-COVID. I believe these are 2018 volumes. And so you can see that I-5 is pretty busy, 150,000 vehicles a day. I-205 is right around 45,000 vehicles a day that kind of come through this interchange area. And as great as daily volumes are to know, even another great thing to know is the kind of the volume profile, especially for something as big as I-5. You want to make the least amount of impact as you can to the traveling public. And so here, this plot is from the portal here in Portland. And you can see it's 2 days of data. And just kind of looking at what's in that red square. It's kind of the best time for impacting the traveling public, about 11 p.m. to about 5 in the morning. And, ODOT did a really good job, and their closure actually was from midnight till 5 a.m., which is right in that window. So when you're getting ready to put together your plan, there's a lot of good information out there. Part 6 of the MUTCD has all your federal shoulds and shalls. And then I've put a couple of pictures up for what the Washington and the Oregon traffic control manuals are. And then the other picture on the top right is a screenshot of my bookmarks. And the one I have highlighted is my ODOT book folder. And under there is the traffic control plan design manual that I have highlighted. And if you look at the bottom left corner, you see I have a bookmark for the MUTCD because I'm in those quite often. And I would say that one of the most important things that I was ever told in college was that the best thing an engineer can do is get out of the office. And I think with traffic control, that's also very, very true. There are things you can see on Google Maps. There are things you can see on the overhead, but there's just something about being out there, checking out, seeing how the roadway is going, and making sure that you can see all your sight lines and all that. And you want to be able to put together a plan that is comprehensive, but you also want it to be clear and easy to follow as the traffic control teams are out there, risking their lives with people, zinging by at 65, 70 miles an hour. And really the last thing they need to do is look at a plan that is confusing to kind of divert their attention away from trying to be safe. So here was the plan that ODOT put together, one of the sheets for this particular closure, where they closed the ramps from I-5 to the 205 as they're putting in a sign bridge. The detour that they were using is highlighted in red up at the next exit, which is Nyberg Road. And as you can see, the plan's pretty comprehensive. There's a lot of information on there, where to put your PCMS boards, all your signs, what the signs are, what the PCMS boards are supposed to say, and all their locations. But even with all the information that's on there, it is very clear and easy to read, which I think is pretty important. So one of the things we were thinking about with this closure was, what information could we get out of the closure? And so what we were looking at was, how's the traffic going to change? And so we have 2 permanent Bluetooth readers, one at the each ramp, northbound and southbound, there at Nyberg. And then we deployed 5 more portable readers at various locations, just to collect data to see, what was going to happen. Here's a kind of the screenshot of where the Bluetooth readers were. And we put them on 2 different routes. And so the first route is the detour itself, coming off of Nyberg to the north of 205. And the other one we looked at was south, coming off of Ellingson. And we figured that if there were people who had more local knowledge and knew that the closure was coming, they might prefer to get off early and take this route. Also, if there's the backup got kind of bad. So I have a little video here because we implemented some timing changes. There's a SCATS corridor just to the east of here. And we put a couple cameras up to kind of see, how things were going to act and see what the impact of the traffic was going to be. So let me play this quick video for you guys. And this is about, I think it's like 10 or 15 minutes kind of condensed down into 10. And as you can see, nothing really happened. Hardly any traffic, hardly any backups.
Matt, we're just
yeah.
seeing your desktop.
Which one, the picture or the video?
The picture.
Oops, okay. There we go, that better? So very little, very little traffic. And so there were some, let's see, get that back, presentation mode, there we go. So there were some hours through the closure where we only got 2 Bluetooth tracks. So, we kind of talked about it, and we're like, what now? Our whole premise was pretty much shot. So as Justin alluded to, ODOT now has, and Washington County does too, access to this new data set, the RIDIS data. And so it's a big data set out of the University of Maryland. And like I said, it has volume, speed, classification, real-time work zone incident information, weather. You could put in your signal information. There's just a whole lot more stuff in there. So our thought was, well, we have this Bluetooth data, so let's see how the 2 data sources match up. So I put together a scatter plot of the average speeds for each hour that we had data for. And I deliberately didn't put any access numbers on here because I kind of wanted to focus on just the dispersion of the data points. And so as you can see with the blue dots, the Bluetooth data is all over the map. Lots of highs, lots of lows. And the RIDIS data, which I believe we in Oregon gets mostly RIDIS or NREX data, while it's scattered, it's a little more concentrated. And this is for the route, the detour route going from I-5 east. And then for the southern route, you can see that the Bluetooth data is also still scattered, not as bad as the other route, but the NREX data is actually pretty solid and looks pretty consistent. And so for the south route, for the average speed, again, the Bluetooth data is pretty well dispersed. NREX data is pretty consistent with itself. And for the travel time, the Bluetooth data, again, scattered, and the NREX data looks really, really solid. And those travel times are really consistent. And so, because we had this, we're like, hey, we have 130 or so Bluetooth readers around, and we have a corridor right close to this closure. Let's see how another corridor looks. And so we looked at the Tualatin Sherwood Road, which goes from Highway 99 to I-5. And along that corridor, we had 9 readers. You can see the proximity. It's really close to the closure site. And this is about a 6-mile corridor. And we wanted to look at kind of the historical data. So we went and got data from last year at the same time. This is June 24th through the 28th. And these ones matched up pretty well. I was really surprised. The Bluetooth data, definitely not as dispersed as the other one. And actually, as I was looking at this, if you could slide the Bluetooth data up or move the INRIX data down a little bit, the patterns actually are very similar to each other for the speed here. And the same thing for the travel time. If you slid that INRIX data up, it would be the pattern of it would be very consistent with what the Bluetooth data was. And then this is going the other direction for the speed, again, really consistent. And also for the travel time, they matched up pretty well. So just a kind of quick summary. So for your work zones, the biggest thing I think, do your homework, get all your data, get your characteristics, visit the site if you can. And then as you're creating your plan, try and make it as comprehensive as possible while making it very clear and easy to follow. Once again, these people are out there and we want to keep them as safe as possible. And as far as the data, it matched pretty good. My observations were that the RIDIS data, will give you a little bit higher speeds, which also equates to lower travel times. The BlueMac data for the closure, my thought is that it was a little more dispersed, mostly due to kind of reader placement, that we didn't have a whole lot of readers out there considering the length of the corridor. And if we had had kind of like a denser deployment, we might have got some better data out of there. But other than that, I think the looking at the data was looked pretty good. So anyway, that's my presentation. And if anybody has any questions, feel free to type them in, and I'll turn it back over to the ITE people.
Thanks, Matt. Our next presenter is Virginia Lingham from WSP. She will be presenting on the intersection of connected and autonomous vehicles and work zone technologies by taking a look at current and ongoing research activities, discussing a few of the latest products hitting the market, and we'll take a look at what public agencies can do to prepare for both the benefits and challenges of connected vehicles in the work zone. Virginia is a senior consultant working in WSP's Transportation Operations Strategies business line, who focuses on helping clients to advance deployment strategies to support connected and automated vehicles, TISMO strategies, ITS, and other emerging technologies. In her free time, she enjoys volunteering, travel, and racing bikes.
All right, thanks, Anna. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, thank you. Thanks for that introduction and for the invite to speak here today. I guess it's really interesting to hear what Justin and Matt shared about what's happening out there in the field. I guess kind of opposite of Matt, I've worked in public sector most of my career and recently made the switch over to the private side where I get to work with Anna at WSP. I'm further down on the 5 down in San Diego, but I do work all across the country, mostly trying to promote and advance connected and automated vehicle technologies and other emerging technologies. So I'm going to be talking a lot about the research activities and different things that are going on at this intersection of connected and automated vehicle technology and work zone technology. Just as an observation, in certain conversations, there's this assumption that connected and automated vehicles is going to happen, and we are going to see this innovation. Another observation is that research on this topic of dedicated lanes or work zones and automated vehicles is is not really shared very much, not very widely known. I'm going to give you some examples of some research activities that are going on across the country here today. And then finally, that pilots and demos are underway to test and promote the readiness of work zone technology, like we heard about already today. But this is happening all over the place, and just kind of identifying a need. I believe that there's a need to collect all that information and continue to share it broadly throughout our transportation network and communities. So again, this is the objective today, to kind of show this overlap between CAV technologies and work zone technologies. And I've added this slide here because I want to share that there's not just one need here. There's a lot of needs and opportunities in this space. If somebody is interested in doing work to advance this, or doing research or getting involved, there are a lot of different ways that you can get involved. We need to identify the technical needs and impacts of CAVs and work zones, you know, the modeling, the data collection, things like that. We need to work on documenting deployed and planned activities. So getting that collective, the collection of just information and publications and just documenting what's happening out there is a big need. We need to do the evaluation of both the qualitative and the quantitative benefits. These things are not really readily available at this time, perhaps in small doses for research activities. We also need to identify new research needs and activities to implement into that others are doing. And then finally, educating stakeholders, educating the public, educating elected officials, educating our own transportation communities, like through ITE, on the different research findings. You know, and that can be through webinars, it could be through handouts, it could be through participating in different community events. But all of these ways are things, or all of these things here are things that you can do to help advance what I'm going to talk about next. So one thing that I really want to highlight, and this is the area that I feel like doesn't get enough light shed on the research happening within this program. And when I was on the public side, I was part of this overarching panel kind of determining the direction and the projects that were going to be pursued as part of this program. So I'm still pretty passionate about this program, even as it's maturing and getting its legs. But this National Highway Cooperative Program, it's funded by, it's had over $6 million of research funded, more than 29 tasks the last I heard. If you just Google NCHRP 2102, it pops up and you can see all of the different projects that are currently active. The focus of the 2102 program, it really is to, one, identify critical issues associated with connected and automated vehicles that state and local transportation agencies, as well as groups like AASHTO, will face. The second objective is to conduct research to address the issues that are identified. And then the third objective is to conduct related technology transfer and information exchange activities related to the issues and the research that have been identified. So these are 3 projects that I found and that I've been involved with that discuss work zones as part of them. The 08 project is about dedicated lanes for priority or exclusive use by CAVs. The 12 project is about business models. And you know, when you talk about work zones, it really makes a compelling case for the business model around deploying CAVs. 2102.15 is about the impacts of CAVs on highway infrastructure, and I'll give an example of that, one of the gaps that was identified. The 19 project is an update on the AASHTO research roadmap. So that update to the roadmap really highlighted that work zones is an area for additional research that's needed. And then finally, this one is, it's not underway yet, but they, as part of this program, there was RFP that went out this summer, this spring, on preparing transportation agencies for CAVs in work zones. So specifically on that topic. And, you know, we'll see in the next year or two what happens with that project. But this is the type of guidance that's and research that's going on at the national level to help provide information to local and state agencies to prepare for CAVs. So just as one example, this is of the 5 reports that I just shared. think only 1 or 2 are published. Most are, the work is complete, but the publication process is rather slow to get them up on the website. Sometimes you'll see webinars or different materials that are posted in advance of the final report being completed. I'd also want to kind of mention, if you do want to get involved with this, we're always looking for new panel members. So if you're interested in this topic and knowledgeable, we need local participation from panel members across the country to do this. So in this 21028 project, they looked at different applications that would be used in dedicated lanes in a connected and automated vehicle environment. And so I have 2 examples here of an application that was potentially modeled in the different areas. And so the first one is a reduced speed work zone warning. So this is just a warning that goes into a vehicle automatically to know that you are approaching a work zone and should be reducing your speed. So like this says, this application utilizes infrastructure to vehicle communication to just broadcast an alert to let drivers or the vehicle control systems know that they are approaching an area where they should reduce their speeds or come to a stop in a work zone. So in a CAV environment, the application really utilizes the connectivity piece to let you know that the speed is dropping and you need to pay attention. Whether the vehicle should go under human control or remain under automated control is debatable. I think that's one of the areas that is being researched further. So this is just one rather simple example of an application that would be really beneficial to advance CAV technologies as you approach a work zone. Another one would be the incident scene work zone alert for both drivers and workers. So this is kind of a 2-way communication. So this application would warn on-scene workers of a vehicle that may be entering the work zone or of some kind of other issue that would cause high risk to the worker in the work zone. It could also, as part of the system, alert the driver that they are entering the wrong area. So just what you can do with that geolocated information and then overlaying it with the fact that you're in the work zone is what's really being explored here. This list here on the left is the different scenarios that were evaluated in 210215, which is the impacts to highway infrastructure of CAVs. And the work zone, scenario, or the work zone topic, it applied to 4 of the 6 different scenarios that were evaluated. The scenarios that it applied to included the automated SAE level 3 conditional traffic jam scenario, the level 3 conditional automated highway drive scenario, the highly automated TNC vehicle, so like Uber or Lyft type of a vehicle, and then also to a low-speed shuttle. So these are the different scenarios that were anticipated to have to go through a work zone, and we were trying to identify the gaps and any actions that would be taken by vehicles or by infrastructure owner-operators in order to make sure that those vehicles in those scenarios were able to navigate through them safely. The 2 main recommended actions were to, 1, develop a new standard data format for communicating detailed information in that work zone. And then the second one would be to research approaches to standardize and improve the consistency of work zone traffic control device placement in the work zones. A lot of times, especially for these low-speed shuttles, they need to know where they are in their environment. They need confirmation of that. That helps their systems run better. So if you have a marker, or if the work zone begins here sign is always in this one spot, or just things like that would really help these automated systems work better. So if you're interested in more information about that project, look for those final reports on that one, 210215, or contact me and I can share some information with you. I guess kind of just wrapping up with this section, just other factors to consider across the population of all road users. Everyone is interested in travel time, so keeping the travel times reliable through work zones, minimizing the traffic impacts, really looking at the traffic flow and speed stability, and that's something especially that automated vehicles can help with, is maintaining the speed that you want them to go or giving advisory speeds to help with speed limit adherence, really minimizing crash risk and improving safety, can also help with energy consumption. And then we're always looking at equity. We don't want to have this perception of exclusivity or social justice bias. So making these available, these automated vehicles and advantages of new technology available to everybody is something that should always be considered as you're deploying. So there are a number of resources that are available and ways to get involved. I just listed a few of them here. ITE is a great resource. There's a CAV committee, ASCE. I'm working with their CAV impacts group on a session for an upcoming symposium. AASHTO has different groups. ATSA, I would say ATSA is the leader for work zone technology topics and discussions. That's where they have an upcoming meeting in January that I hope to attend, and they talk about all the latest and greatest topics. NHTSA is the leader, I would say, on this topic from the federal point of view. And then sites like this, workzonesafety.org is a great resource too. So I just wanted to point out that there are a number of organizations who are looking at this topic and interested in this topic and really doing good work. Now, a lot of times when you think about automated vehicles, people go to, well, isn't there federal guidance? What's happening with federal guidance? Well, in January of this year, USDOT did release the Automated Vehicles 4.0 guidance. This guidance, it's the fourth version of this, and so this version really talks about how the different agencies within the government, within the federal government, work together. This was a joint effort between the National Science and Technology Council and USDOT, and it really just shows how the different government agencies are supposed to align. I was on a call last week with somebody at NHTSA, and she really emphasized with me that these different federal guidance documents, so the 2.0, 3.0, 4.0, they're all still valid, and they're just building from each other. They're not replacing each other. So the first one was really about vehicles. The third one was about multimodal, bringing in different types of vehicles, and this one is about bringing in different agencies. So if you're looking for federal guidance, it is out there, but you just kind of have to understand what the intent is behind each of these different documents. The 4.0 guidance, when you look at what it talks about with work zones, it really points to this work zone data initiative and the work zone data exchange. So these are great sites, great resources. There's currently a notice of funding opportunity out for a deployment to advance this work zone data exchange. Some of you may be getting prepared to submit on that. So the collaboration site is available as a resource. The goals of the work zone data exchange is to have a simple open specification that can be available for any application developer or anyone to grab onto and be able to know what they're going to expect as they enter that work zone in order for it to be broadly adopted. And so ultimately we can save lives, especially in work zones. If you're interested in more of this, there is a specification out there. If you haven't seen it, everything is posted on GitHub, and there's just, it's a wealth of information there to check out. So now just to wrap up, I just kind of want to do a little level setting about what's happening with connected and automated vehicles. I like this cartoon. It's actually quite old. This is from 2014. It's a video now where you might look into a car and think, oh, there's nobody driving that car. But in the future, we might be looking at that car and think, oh my gosh, there's somebody driving that car. What are they going to do? So I just kind of like to mention that, every technology goes through this hype curve from Gartner. Most people have probably seen this. I feel like we are in this area where the blue is, where we have gone through the peak of inflated expectations and we're trudging through the trough of disillusionment as we actually figure out what the technology can and can't do for us. I like to keep my eye on the prize and focus on methodologies and best practices as we develop our second and third generation products. And keep aiming towards that slope of enlightenment, towards the plateau of productivity as we realize the true benefits of these technologies, especially in those key areas like work zones. And then also that there's not going to be one solution for our future state of mobility. How this rolls out in different areas is really going to vary. And one person or one region's version of a utopia or a dystopia might be completely different from another version or another areas. So this is an image that Deloitte developed, and on the bottom, it shows from the left to the right is vehicle ownership, going from personal ownership, where we maintain ownership of our personal vehicles, to the right, a world of car sharing, where the community is more invested in sharing vehicles and doesn't see the need for personal ownership. And the vertical axis here is vehicle control. So at the bottom would be where the driver would remain in control of the vehicle, just as we do for the most part today. In the middle would be assistance, and then up on the top would be autonomous. So if you had your own personal vehicle that was had a driver assistance feature or autonomous features, then that would be number 3, like the driverless revolution. And so like folks who want to live far away and just get in their car and be driven to the city or wherever they're going to go, they kind of fall in that camp. And then number 4 would be the shared vehicle ownership, and then high autonomy. So that would be the age of accessible autonomy. So that's where a lot of people have access to those types of vehicles. So again, it's hard to say what the future holds, but I think planning for options and for a diverse future is the best bet. So with that, thank you so much for the opportunity to share my thoughts on this topic, and I'll be happy to take any questions. And I would like to echo what Matt said earlier about the importance of getting out of the office and experiencing things. If you ever have an opportunity to ride in a shuttle, drive a Tesla, experience automation, experience technology, it's really important that you do it and that you experience it and kind of build your trust and knowledge around that. Okay.
Thanks, Virginia. So now is our question and answer session, a part of the presentation. Unfortunately, Justin King did have to run to another meeting, so he's not available. But if you have any questions, you can send them to us and we can forward them on, or you can contact him directly. I did see one question come in. Looks like it's for Matt. And the question is, what do you think can explain the higher speed from INRIX versus Bluetooth?
There you go. Oh, there he is. Okay. I put one into the chat. My thought on that was that because the INRIX data is coming kind of more directly from the vehicle, it's probably a little bit better data than one that's being kind of calculated by the readers, especially if they're spaced out far like ours were. There's shopping, and different things in between the readers that could throw, if a reader sees it at one point, all of a sudden they go into 7-Eleven, they grab some nachos and then head on down. Well, now their trip time is really long. And so it can't account for that. But I think the INRIX data, because it's coming from the vehicle, has a little bit more post-processing to keep those a little bit more consistent.
Thank you. I don't see any other questions coming in, so we'll leave a few more minutes if anybody has any questions. Otherwise, I want to point out to everyone that the slides for all the presentations today are available. If you look in the handouts tab of GoToMeeting, you can download them there. And I just want to thank all of our presenters today. This is great, so thank you so much for presenting. And also thank you all you attendees for tuning in. And I also want to put out a plug that Ioana and I would love to hear from you. If you have any ideas for future topics, please reach out to us. You can find our contact information on the Oregon ITE webpage. And it looks like there's one more question. So I think it's for Virginia. So the question is, what steps are being taken to prevent existing inequities from being carried over to new automation systems?
That's a pretty big question. I don't know. I think I can't think of anything off the top of my head. I mean, I know that FHWA is looking at that specific topic right now. I just think it's important to include, in our planning process that we take everybody's, experiences into account. We take different technology levels into account. Things like assuming that everybody has a smartphone. Not everybody has a smartphone. Not everybody has the ability to, have a universal payment card and have their credit card. So I think just having options available and also, investing in automation for transit, which is, public transportation, making sure that those types of transportation solutions are receiving the benefits of automation too, are good ways to approach it.
Thank you. And I don't see any other questions, so I guess we will end it here. And this webinar was recorded, so if anybody would like a copy of the recording, just reach out to Maggie and she can get that for you. So again, thanks for attending and thanks to our presenters, and we'll see you next time.
Have a good afternoon.
Thanks. Bye.
Thank you, everyone.